Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me, Ultiworld senior editor Keith Raynor. It's a big AUDL preview special this week. Of course, we encourage you to subscribe to Stall 7, Ultiworld's AUDL podcast. They're planning weekly episodes this year, so you definitely want to check in with Chris McLinn and Alex Rubin for all things AUDL, but we also talk a little AUDL here on the show. We're going to kind of take a high-level look at what's going on around the league today. But first, Keith, you found a survey, and we need to talk about it.
This actually was posted in our Discord, and I think maybe has gained a lot of traction online. You know, it's trending on Twitter. It's trending. I don't even have to say on Twitter. It's just trending.
It's a trending story.
That's how things are these days, because social media networks all mesh together. Basically, YouGov, who's a pretty notable, like, respected polling group. Am I right?
That's true, yeah.
Polled Americans on if they thought they could defeat animals in one-on-one combat, unarmed combat. And we're surprised by the percentage of Americans who thought they could defeat some of the most dangerous animals on Earth in one-on-one unarmed combat. And these results maybe say something more about Americans than the animals themselves. But 6% of Americans think that if faced with a grizzly bear in a fight, they could prevail. 8% for lions, elephants, gorillas, separately each.
Elephants?
How are you going to fell an elephant?
I don't even understand.
Unarmed.
I don't even understand the logic of, like, if you're, like, in the arena with an elephant, how is it that you're supposed to defeat it? Like, are you going to get up on its back and, like, poke its eyes out? Because I don't really know what your other options are. Like,
can you imagine trying to climb an elephant that didn't want you to?
That was trying to kill you?
It's just no chance. Like, it's preposterous. It's very, very silly. I mean, the list is very odd.
6% grizzly bear.
6% grizzly bear. Grizzly bears are like, what, like 800 pounds or something?
They're huge and vicious. And again, like, the eyes, I don't really know what else you do. Like, it's just going to slash you once and it's over.
It's totally ridiculous. One of the strangest things to me on here is that, so 15% of people said that they could defeat a king cobra. Just slightly more than people who said they could defeat kangaroos.
Defeat a king cobra.
Well, I'm impressed that people realize that kangaroos are incredibly dangerous, because only 14% of people said they could beat kangaroos. I'm pretty sure kangaroos would kill us. Very dangerous. A cobra, I think we have a chance at, because the plan of attack is clear, right? Like, it has a weakness, and you know what you have to deal with. That's less than the percentage of people who thought they could beat a chimpanzee. 17% of people thought they could beat a chimpanzee. A chimpanzee would take
is gonna mess you
less than 60 seconds to completely obliterate you. I don't know how more people thought they could beat a chimpanzee than a king cobra.
A king cobra is just a snake. I mean,
it's just a very venomous snake.
It's a venomous snake, but, like, how do you even, like, determine this? Because if a king cobra bites you, okay,
you're dead.
I grab it, I pull it out of my skin, I beat it on the ground. It is dead before I am dead. Do I win, or is it a wash? I don't know.
It's true. If you're, I don't know how long the paralysis effect, that I believe is the effect of a cobra's venom, takes to set in. I would bet it's like within 45 seconds to 2 minutes or something in that range, which is enough time for you to kill a snake.
Okay, some of these other numbers also make no sense. Can we, like, let's look at the top of the chart, okay? I don't know how many animals they asked about, but the number one animal, so the Americans were most convinced they could beat in a fight, was a rat. Well, that seems pretty reasonable, right? But only 72% of people said that they could beat a rat. A rat. How is a rat going to even do anything to you? You just kick it away from you. 69% of people said they could defeat a house cat. I mean, what are the other 31% going to do? Just, like, lay on the ground and let the cat scratch them to death? I don't understand. Like, I have a cat.
It would be kind of hard for a house cat to kill you.
It would be impossible. So
you would need to be incapacitated.
There's like clear, like massive underconfidence for some of these options, as well as massive overconfidence for some of these options.
Like a medium-sized dog. What's a medium-sized? Like I have a medium-sized dog. 30 pounds or whatever, 40 pounds. Like it's dangerous.
It's too small.
But you could be able to take a medium-sized dog.
You're physically going to overpower the dog.
Right. You're just too strong, I think, too big, really, for the dog to be able to kill you in faster than you can kill it.
Now,
30% on eagle feels like eagles are huge, but I think an eagle would have a hard time killing you.
A hard time. Have a hard time.
I think you killing the eagle is also hard. Maybe harder. I don't know, but only 30%. The margins are clearly ridiculous.
That's crazy. Okay. Last thing before we move on. 61% of people said they could defeat a goose. Okay, how dangerous is a goose? They're not nice animals, all right?
And they're big. They're pretty big.
And they're mean. I don't think they could... I mean, it depends on how you define win the fight. Like, if my life depends on me killing the goose, I'm going to kill the goose. Okay?
I think so.
But like if I'm just like trying to like go about my day and the goose is coming after me, like it might win. Cuz like I don't really want to have to like battle the goose if I don't.
Are y'all picturing Charlie like trying to edit an article while a goose is just like heretically pecking at him like
they're vicious. They're vicious.
Turkeys. Now turkeys they're a real problem. They're worse than geese to me.
Oh, really?
They're big.
What a turkey
they're
mean
really
a goose
mean.
In a fight?
They're really mean. Turkeys. Yeah, I don't want to mess with turkeys. I'd like to meet the 8% of people who think they could defeat a gorilla unarmed. Like, there's just you're more likely for the gorilla to beat you to death with a part of your body that it ripped off of you.
A gorilla is a bigger, massively stronger human. So what is it that you're going to do exactly?
A gorilla can bench press like 1,200 pounds. It's like there's no chance that you could defeat a gorilla. I don't care if you are like a Navy SEAL. There's no chance.
Yeah. And it's not like a gorilla's not smart. They're smart.
This is a very silly poll, but I'm glad that it exists. Now, we're going to spend the rest of the episode talking about AUDL teams versus these animals. which AUDL team could...
AUDL team would lose to a goose in a fight?
It's got to be Detroit, right?
Yes, it's definitely
Detroit versus a team of 7 geese.
It's definitely Detroit. And it's just another tough year for Detroit. Tough scene for Detroit, just in general.
Sorry, Detroit.
Well, yeah, let's get into it here. So the AUDL season starts June 4th. That's Friday night. Yeah, we'll actually be broadcasting some of the New York games. We'll be broadcasting the opener for New York on Friday, June 4th. Looking forward to doing that. Mentioned on last week's show that the Audi Field in Washington, D.C. has just been announced as the host for championship weekend this September. And so I think first and foremost, like, let's just talk about the kind of the AUDL club interaction really quickly. This is an interesting year because the AUDL and club seasons are basically fully overlapping besides regionals and nationals. And, there's obviously been a lot of overlap in the past, but not quite as much. The AUDL starts a couple months before the club season. And this year it's like fully overlapping. How is this going to play out? And it seems so far that the approach is very different in different cities.
It's going to be one of the storylines to watch. I mean, it's not exactly going to play out in the way that makes it a super consumable story because, it's going to just be like who's on what roster. I think for the most part, maybe there'll be some like crossover where players are playing for both teams and they have to miss certain games. Maybe that's something we'll see, especially if club teams are a little more lax in their regular seasons. But I think that it could really have an impact on roster makeup mostly, which we'll know as we go into the actual AUDL season and once we get finalized rosters. But there are going to be some teams I think who are going to be really hamstrung by this problem.
I mean, some teams are kind of all in. Raleigh, for example, is the current plan is that Ring may not even play any club tournaments this year. And a lot of that roster is going to be playing on the Flyers in the AUDL. Chicago, we talked to Pavlianis about this. New York, on the other hand, a lot less crossover than in the past. So Pony has made rules that are a lot stricter about, attendance at tournaments and practices. And that means that some players and coaches are not going to be on the Empire this year that have been kind of stalwarts in the past. Players like Harper Garvey, Chris Kocher had signed up last year to play the AUDL and will not be playing this year. And, Empire coach Brian Jones is not coaching this year. So real different approaches. And we'll have to see some of the key guys on the Empire, like your Ben Yachts, your Jeff Babbitts, have been big pieces on Pony in the past. Will they be on the Pony roster when we get to the club season? That's a question that has not yet been answered. So an interesting thing to keep an eye on. So when you think about the teams that you expect to be at the top this year, Keith, who comes to mind first for you? Championship contenders.
There are 4 teams to me that stand out above the rest, and then a 5th team that I think is in a position to potentially break into that group.
Okay.
The team at the top, I think you've got questions about, but it's hard to argue with looking at the reigning champs, the New York Empire. We expect Yacht is back, Babbitt's back, Jack Williams is back. These are all AUDL MVP quality players, and there just are very few teams that can say that they boast 3 of those players. Plus, they're adding Ryan Osgar, who we expect to be a big-time impact player for them. A couple of other names. Now, they're going to have to deal with the loss of Chris Kocher. They're going to have to deal with the loss of Harper Garvey, with the mastermind Brian Jones. I think that is going to make them feel a lot more fallible this season, when last year they felt kind of like an unreachable juggernaut. So that I expect to play out. I think that, I wouldn't necessarily take a bet that they're going to go undefeated this year, but I do think you have to start with them as the favorite.
Well, I mean, you at least have to consider them because they won the championship in the past. I think the big, the question marks that I have, like, how good is Ryan Osgar going to be on this team? That's definitely a big question that I have. They also picked up Elliot Chartok, who I was just talking to Matt Stevens, who's been a longtime player and is co-owner of the team, and he was just raving about Chartok's play at practice. Said that he's just been an awesome fit in their backfield, with all of these kind of like really talented cutters around him. So I like the Empire roster. I think they're probably the best team in the Atlantic. I think Raleigh will have something to say about that, but certainly they're going to be very competitive still. I just wonder if the depth will be quite what it was, and does that cause problems for them? It's, I think we'll have to see. And Harper Garvey's been a really important piece for them in the backfield. Will that production get replaced?
I'm on their team site right now. I guess I can't say for sure how updated this roster is, but it looks fairly current. And Saul Reuschmeyer Bailey is on here.
Ah, nice.
I've not heard that he had signed with the team, but certainly a notable addition.
Brown University product.
Yeah, and the kind of player who I think could thrive in their environment where they do such a good job developing role players into very specific roles.
Yeah.
And this is someone who knows how to play next to star players who need a lot of usage.
Yeah, and that's going to be the thing. They have some kind of tentpole guys around them. And, don't forget, like, veterans like Ryan Drost, Matt Lamar, who, may not be huge names, but have been very, very effective parts of the team for some time. I think, the Grant Lindsley is the other big loss for them. Probably should have mentioned him right off the top. He's somebody who was a big part of their offense, at times was maybe their best player. And, can they fill that Probably. I mean, that's the thing. They had so many good pieces last year. Like, Jack Williams can get more touches. It's not a big problem for them. And they, still have great, I don't even know if you call Ben Katz a role player, but potentially, Marquez Brownlee's still on this team. They're still talented. I just think they're maybe not quite as talented top to bottom as they were a year ago. So maybe you don't put them at the top of the leaderboard. If I'm going to pick a team that I think is, kind of like the preseason favorite, you have to go with Dallas. Not only is this a team that has been competitive, year after year, has kind of been dominating in that South Division. Now they move, of course, to the West. But they pick up, like, many of the other best players in Texas that weren't already on their team. So you're already taking your Abe Coffins and your Dalton Smiths, but they're picking up a bunch of the Austin Soul players. They pick up Chris Mazer this year. Hunter Taylor, who moved from Raleigh a couple years ago, is going to be on the roster as well. So, you look at that, and then, the Chase Cunningham coming over from Austin. Like, when you poach the best players from the other team in the state, and then you add some big free agents, and you don't really lose anybody, I don't see how you don't pick them as the favorite, because I think top to bottom they have the most playmaking.
The continuity here is definitely a big value. Being able to have a lot of the players who this team was already looking for as central playmakers. So, you mentioned Abe Coffin, your Jay Fruits, your Kaplan Moores, your Carson Wilders, Dylan Larberg, and then be able to plug in, Chase Cunningham, Kyle Henke, getting, Chambers back, getting Mazer back, who's played with the team, but not quite with this group. Kai Marshall. There's players who could take a step forward on this team, like Matt Armour or Henry Ferruta. Like, everything about this team, I think, it gives them good reason to have championship aspirations. And with the step back that we expect the Empire to take, I do think that puts Dallas as a chance to be potentially the front runner throughout the year. I mean, it would not surprise me for them to take the early lead in the standings and establish themselves as the top team and remain that way wire to wire. That would not shock me.
They could win all their games. I mean,
yeah,
they're easily the best team in the West. I mean, I think they'll probably lose. I assume they have a San Diego road game. I need to look up their schedule. Especially if they catch San Diego on a back-to-back, they might lose that game on the road. But I wouldn't be surprised if they went undefeated. I mean, San Diego's good, but they're not as good as Dallas. And that'll be also something to keep an eye on. Like, can they stay fresh? Because they are getting a lot of easy wins during the season, and that puts them in a good position for the playoffs. I think that's a possibility. I think they have the easiest path for any
It
team.
does look like they have a back-to-back against LA and San Diego, in LA and San Diego.
And the second game of the back-to-back is in San Diego.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. I think that's tough. I think they only have to make that road trip once, but it's pretty early in the season. It looks like they're playing June 25th and then June 26th. And that June 26th game is at 5:00. It's pretty early. So if there's a spot for San Diego, I mean, it's not like San Diego's a pushover. That game is going to be super crucial for the Growlers, because if they can get that win, San Diego is going to win a lot of games too. If they can get that win, that's going to put them in a great spot to potentially get home field advantage for the playoffs.
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of potential letdown spots. I don't think this is a lock for Dallas. I've struggled to decide if I think they are favored over the Empire, if they should be the number one seed in the power rankings, but I think they have a pretty good claim to the spot.
So then, I think the other team you have to look at is Raleigh, Keith.
Absolutely. Lots of talent. They've shown the ability to lose key players, and I don't think they're losing Bobby Lay and Misha Freestatter, and I think those are not as grievous an injury to their talent level as what we've seen them survive in past years, losing Jack Williams, losing Goose Helton. You still expect some of these players to continue to take a step forward. having played really well as young players for them. They're Eric Taylors, they're Jacob Fairfax, Henry Fisher. They're bringing in Matt Guchohannes, Elijah Long, I believe Walker Matthews. So all that kind of UNC core that already knows how to play really well together. If there's one thing Raleigh's done, it's build a system of players who have a lot of experience playing together and know how to operate together. And it makes them really good, I think, at integrating new pieces into that system. So I think Raleigh should be really competitive. And now no Dallas in their way between them and trying to get into the final weekends of the season.
And they have to be thrilled about that.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
Even if the competition level is higher in this new Atlantic division, they just have to be so glad not to play that Dallas team that just owned them in the big spots for years. I mean, as good as Raleigh looked in 2019, they dominated Dallas at points during the regular season. Dominated them. Then it came down to the playoffs to get the win. Roughneck showed up. They always show up. So for Raleigh, I think even if you look up and down and you're like, there's some good teams in this conference. You've got the Empire, of course. You've got the new team in Boston. The Breeze are good. The Atlanta Hustle have gotten a lot better this year, adding Antoine Davis, Michael Fairley, Parker Bray coming back to the team. Even the Thunderbirds are like a pretty good team. So I think, top to bottom, there's probably more talent in this Atlantic division, but Raleigh has to feel really good about just getting away from Dallas and like, okay, we get a fresh start. We know we can compete with these teams, and we'll feel really good about our chances of making the playoffs because of the extra playoff spot in the division. We'll see how they match up with the Empire, but I think they probably take that matchup over the Dallas matchup, just given the historical weight and the psychological impact.
Definitely. Kind of the opposite is the other team that I have in the top four. Raleigh is this mainstay that has a lot of continuity. We're so used to seeing them be one of the top teams in the league.
Ton of roster continuity.
Yeah. And not just roster continuity, but the system continuity, leadership continuity. The other team that jumps out to me is a little bit of the opposite, and that's Chicago Union.
Yeah.
Not only it's funny that the year that it feels like the team is making a big change is also the year that the team changed names, changed brands. So it's like kind of like a new birth. But you look at the players who are getting added to this team: Joe White, Pat Shriwise, Peter Graffey, Keegan North, and Kirk Gibson is back. So, I mean, that's like a team unto itself. If I just told you that core of any team, you'd be like, wow, that's going to be a competitive team. But then you're adding that to the core that was already there. Pavlianis, Nate Goff, Ross Barker. I mean, this is a team that I think people are buzzing about and feel like one of the best challengers outside of that top three as a team that could really move up the ranks and climb the ladder this year.
Well, and a lot of commitment from the top players in Chicago who are going to be focusing on this AUDL season. So that matters in the AUDL. We've seen it over the years. And, we've watched the bulk of the players on this team nearly win a national championship in the club division last year, 2019. So we know they can be really competitive. And I said earlier that Dallas maybe has the easiest path to the championship weekend. I actually think that's wrong. I think it's Chicago, because not only did they get better, but they made their in-division rivals worse. Like, the Madison Radicals, which have been this dominant team in this division for a long time, they're not as good when they lose Peter Graffey. And I mean, they've kind of been on the decline a little bit since they won the championship a couple years back. So then, I honestly, I think you look at the next best team in this region, it's not Madison, it's probably Minnesota. But is Minnesota good enough to really compete with the Chicago team if Chicago's, putting up their best 20 every weekend? I don't think so. I think Chicago clearly has a big edge in this division, and I don't know that they're going to win the championship, but I do think that they're going to easily make a championship weekend out of the Midwest.
Yeah, that central region is got to be the weakest region. You got the Radicals taking a step back. You got the Alley Cats losing some of their like franchise cornerstones. And you got Detroit, who's Detroit still. Like, unless we see a big change, it's hard to believe that we're going to see them make change their fortunes this year. So the Wind Chill are really their primary challengers, and they're losing one of their best players in Ryan Oscar. So yes, I think the Wind Chill are a solid competition, but yeah, the Union feel a big step above almost every other team, and getting so many games against lower quality competition, teams I think that are going to be in the bottom 5 of the entire league, is really going to help them take some time to gel, be able to avoid, getting in really tight, scrappy games that are going to drain you during the regular season. And I think that's all helpful for the Union this year.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other topics going on in the AUDL, the league's investment in sports betting, media marketing campaigns, the Audi Field, where they're going to be having the championship weekend, and, where exactly is the league after a year off the field? So stay with us. It's Deep Look. Welcome back to Deep Look. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about the teams before we move on to some other topics. And, we talked about contenders at the top, championship contenders. Are we snubbing San Diego? This team, very good, makes it to the championship weekend in 2019, and they've gotten better. The problem is, hello, Dallas, welcome to the West Division. But does this San Diego team have a chance to get past Dallas and make that championship weekend out of the West?
They've got to be the top contender. A lot of quality additions to this San Diego team that already was a pretty strong team, and they returned their most important players. They returned Travis Dunn and Goose Helton, these all AUDL level players, and then you add to that some players who I think maybe not respected enough in Greg Cohen and Jeff Silverman. We know that Nate Pettyjohn can be explosive if all the pieces are there for him. Khalif El-Salam and Lior Givell are proven. Like there's a lot to like about the additions that San Diego is making to a core that was already probably one of the best in the league.
I mean, they had one of the best offenses in the league, but their defense was weak and they got a little bit exposed at championship weekend. So do these pieces make them better? Yeah. I mean, I think you can stick Nate Pettyjohn on D. You can put Khalif wherever you want, but certainly he could anchor a D-line for you and give you explosive offense after a turnover. I like the team. I really do. I just think Dallas is maybe too strong. It's kind of that Raleigh-Dallas thing all over again. San Diego has to be looking at that and saying, they need to start game planning now for how they're going to beat that Dallas team. I mean, it really is going to come down to that because they're head and shoulders above the other teams in the division. I don't really think that, sure, could they lose a game here and there? Yes. But like San Jose, Seattle, I just don't think these teams really have an opportunity to beat them. The Aviators, I think, are a little bit worse this year than they were in the past. I mean, they'll be solid, and the Aviators know the Growlers well, so they'll be competitive. But I just think, the Growlers have clearly leveled up, but the problem is they just got the best team in the league that came into their division.
Yeah, well, welcome to the trap that Raleigh's been in for a few years. They know what it's like to be really damn good and it still not be good enough. We actually didn't really even talk about the qualification process and kind of the redrawing of these divisions this year.
That's true. You have Austin and Dallas moving over to the West. You have the Canadian teams getting pulled out, so there's no East Division this year. So, I mean, we have kind of like a particular COVID change compared to the normal year. But that means that there's a very big Atlantic region that is Boston, New York, Raleigh, DC, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, and Philadelphia. And what's interesting about the Atlantic is that like most of those teams are better than they were the last time they played.
There's no layups.
Yeah. And we don't know how good that Boston team is going to be, but they're going to be competitive. And,
Tampa and Philadelphia are probably the teams that you would anticipate being at the bottom of this league. And like they're still not teams that you can afford to play poorly against. I mean, these are quality clubs that have beaten good teams on many occasions and probably will be better this year than they were last year. So I think it's a really tough division. And I think that's going to be a real battleground. I don't think there's going to be any weeks where we're going to just get chalk in Atlantic play.
That's right. And they get the extra playoff spot. They get 3 playoff spots. The other divisions just get the 2. The Central is same minus Pittsburgh. So Madison, Indy, Chicago, Minnesota, and Detroit. And I mean, it's going to be an interesting year. The Atlantic is so much fun because I think the other divisions, you kind of have a clear pecking order. And the Atlantic, it's like, yes, there's some teams that are at the top of the heap, but you have the extra playoff spot. And like, how good is Atlanta going to be? They're going to be better. And they're, really well coached. I think that team is one to watch. They could surprise this year on the upside and be one of the better, kind of like most improved team type stories.
I'll be curious about Atlanta. Given the way that the division is constructed, like having them get tested every week, I think is going to be really challenging for them. I'll be curious if they have the kind of heavy workload players that might be necessary to get through that. I think Matt Smith is really the only one who's proven that capability week in and week out.
I mean,
there are a lot
Anton
of good players
Davis
on this team. Yeah,
that rep as well. Even though he's
Antoine Davis has been really productive, but I think he struggled a little bit with turnovers, and we'd probably benefit from being in a team that de-emphasized his like have to do it allness and let him focus on a couple of areas of strength. And I don't know that the Hustle are going to be able to do that, although they're extremely well coached, and he's had a lot of success when playing with system teams like Revolver. So, he's a big time playmaker. There's no doubt about it. I just don't know if he quite fits the high usage role that they might need somebody in. He's obviously a tremendous player defensively and as a finisher, but I feel like they need that like give me the rock player, and I don't know if he fills that. He feels more in the Matt Smith mold.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see. What there's enough new players that I kind of wonder what the lineups are going to look like, and that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on this year. But Atlanta's been competitive in the past, even though they were not necessarily making the playoffs, and they've clearly gotten better. So how much better? Well, that remains to be seen.
We haven't even talked about the mystery box of Boston.
Oh yeah,
the newest franchise. We really have no idea what to expect from them. All we know is it's Boston. Boston is historically a great Ultimate town, and we really don't know what that's going to turn into. They could be the worst team in the Atlantic or the whole league, or they could be a championship contender. Like, we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they are getting some cohesion, which I think is what you're looking for with an AUDL team. You've got players from Dig and from Sprout playing on this team. So, Ben Sadok is on the roster, Noah Backer, Max Rick, Ryan Turner. So, because there's a lot of really good talent in the Boston area, but there's so many teams, including many very good mixed division teams, that players kind of get spread out. Tanner Johnson's on the team, Henry Babcock. You go on the list. It's young, for sure. I mean, they have Orion Cable, who hasn't even played his first college game yet. But it's solid. Cricket is on the roster. So
yeah, we'll very see. Young Cricket. Yeah, young team got Cricket.
I'm curious to see what they look like. Cohesion is a question mark. Talent is there though. So, is this team going to? I think this is a team that's going to want to go to the playoffs. Whether they should expect to try to win in the playoffs, I don't know about that.
I think they're going to end up being a tier 2 or 3 team.
Sure.
A team good enough to challenge the championship contenders, but not good enough to do that day in and day out. I think a lot of people would probably point to that as their median outcome. That's what I'm trying to say.
Median income.
Medium income. Yeah. Think of something totally different. But I think that that makes them one of the most interesting storylines going into the season. So we got to talk about them at some point,
So the league has been investing a lot in its media and its marketing. They've hired a bunch of full-time staff for their marketing department, and they're clearly starting to try to put more energy and emphasis into that. And they've signed some new international distribution deals. They have the FS2 contract continuing this year. The championship game will air on tape delay on FS1 later this year. This is a really interesting season for the AUDL. In many ways, I'm impressed because they have managed to have the year off, but like come back and feel like that they didn't just completely lose momentum. Now, it remains to be seen what that's going to mean for viewership and how many people are coming to games. Obviously, COVID is still a factor. We don't even know, certain cities may have limitations on how many people can come out to games. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but I have to, give credit to the AUDL for managing to stay on top of things and get back to having a season this year when it would have been really easy to kind of let things fall apart a little bit after not being able to play in 2020.
I wonder how much of that was helped by the fact that they did have some media presence over the course of the break. They were still airing material right on FS2. They were still putting out content, and I think that probably helps bridge the gap a little bit for them, keeps everybody engaged. But I think they also they were pretty dead set on trying to make a season happen this year, and because they had that mindset, it always felt like. I imagine that in the office, it always felt like we just had to get to this point. We just had to get to the point where we can launch back off. And that probably helped hold the momentum together for them.
And another thing to watch for this year, they're rolling out this new live statistics keeping, which is going to power not only, real-time updates to the stats during the game, but offers a lot of opportunity for things like sports betting, something that the league is focused on a bunch, fantasy, and it's going to, drive graphics in the broadcasts. So there's going to be real-time stats. This is obviously an area that Ultimate has struggled with. And we've talked a ton about this, Keith, because you and I are both stats heads. And it's a big struggle for Ultimate a lot of the time to have accurate stats quickly. And the AUDL has basically developed their own platform to keep stats in real time. Now, the integrity of those stats, we'll have to see how they look. It's difficult when you're having to do it all by hand, but this is, it's required for teams to keep track of stats, including yardage. By the way, that's a really important note. This is, to me, the kind of the big step that has to happen if you want to have that kind of consistent engagement, because, without those real-time stats, it's hard to pop into a game and see what's going on, get a box score. Fantasy and gambling, that's all driven by having those stats in real time. It's not so fun to play a fantasy game when you have to check in 3 days later to see how you did. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on this year. How does that go? Because they're rolling it out for the first time.
All of that leads me to believe that there's going to be a big push from the organization to make the game more friendly for a remote experience. And that makes sense in a year when it's very much up in the air how many people are going to be able to experience an AUDL game live, where for a lot of teams, gate revenue really wasn't a driving factor for them. So for the league, I think it makes sense to pivot into how can we exist in a digital world? How can we present the product in a way that's engaging through streaming and other platforms, but how can we reach beyond just giving people access to the footage and making a quality broadcast, making engaging activities that people can do, even if you don't watch the game. even if you're just following along on Twitter or you're watching a couple highlights on social media, if you can follow along with your app or, check the stats of the game afterwards, like that helps bring you into it's almost like a movie or a book, like building a world that people want to be inside of and talk about. And I think that the UDL has a vision for that feels forward thinking to me. And I think we're probably going to see more of that play out over the course of the season. We'll see what the actual, broadcast capabilities look like, but that would be my thought. This all indicates to me that they're thinking, how can we make this product engaging for somebody who isn't just going to sit down in front of the TV or go to a game and watch, an hour or two of Ultimate.
Right. And look, I 100% bet on sporting events that I do not watch. Definitely happens. I'm not a big fantasy player myself, but I know that that's also huge. And like, there's plenty of people who play NFL fantasy that don't even really watch the games that much. They're just paying attention to how their fantasy team is doing. But the NFL is happy
when you do have some money on the line,
100%.
It makes tuning in a lot more interesting.
That's
even if
100%.
the game sucks, like you could tune into a game that's a 10-point game, but if you're right around where the spread is, or you have so-and-so in fantasy and you want to see if they can get you that extra goal, suddenly you have a hook to tune in.
So the championship weekend is going to be held in Audi Field, just announced last week. It's a stadium that mostly hosts Major League Soccer and the National Women's Soccer League in DC on the subway, 20,000 seats. So we've seen the AUDL be in stadiums even bigger than this in the past, Avaya out in California, and then, the Silver Dome in the league's first season, which was very ambitious. The 80,000 seat decrepit Silver Dome, and there were like 100 people there. Is that a risk for the AUDL having a big stadium like this that, let's be honest, they're probably not going to fill it up?
I don't know that it's as big a risk as people feel like. I mean, you have the capability to get a little creative with your camera angles here. You're not going to be able to make the stadium look full, but you can make it look like people care with some tight shots and the right angles to film from. I think that is a minor cost. If there's a cost, associated with the actual arrangement to get to the stadium, if you have a 20,000 capacity stadium, you're not going to offer the same price as you would if you have a 2,000 or 2,500 person, stadium. So that kind of stuff, I think there's some risk if they are like on the hook a little bit, but I'm thinking that they know what they're doing on that front. I'm not super worried about the presentation of a giant stadium. It's different than the Silver Dome, which would be really hard to like
cavernous. Yeah.
It's just really hard it's indoors. So like the sound of it doesn't feel right when there's 100 people. Like, I don't expect that issue to be quite as pronounced. I also don't expect them to make it feel like it's halftime at one of those NFL games that they're
I also got to say, this is a brand new stadium. I think it opened in the second half of 2018. Beautiful. They're going to be selling VIP cabana tickets and stuff like that. Honestly, the AUDL championship games at this point are probably the most fun thing to go to in Ultimate. Sure, if you're a diehard fan and, you pay attention to everything, going to college or club nationals is kind of like the pinnacle of the, sort of fan experience in terms of, watching the highest level competition. But, if you're more of a casual fan, the AUDL championship weekends have been really good the last couple of years. There's food and there's music and there's a vibe and you feel like you're at an actual professional sporting event, and you don't get that feeling at nationals. You don't. When you're playing in a high school stadium, it just doesn't have the same vibe. And you're playing at 12 in the afternoon on a Sunday. It just doesn't have the same vibe. And the AUDL this year, following in the footsteps of what the PUL did, is going to go to a Friday-Saturday format this year, and that means that basically they're going to have all night games. And Keith, we've talked about it so many times on Deep Look. That is huge. There's just going to be a vibe to the stadium, even if it's, only a quarter full or whatever. That's probably even ambitious. It's also COVID year. So people are used to watching spread out fans in stadiums, to be honest. So, I think I'm excited to see what it can do to have a stadium that's very easily accessible in a major city. You don't have to drive to the game. You can just be like, oh, like we should go to this on Friday night. We'll take the subway, the metro. Sorry, DC people.
Yeah, there you go.
I lived in DC for a summer.
I'd be curious how much like local traffic they get, so to speak. Not people who came to DC because they wanted to watch an Ultimate game. You know what I mean?
You mean just like people who live in DC who are like, oh, look at this cool sporting event.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be somebody who's like literally has no engagement with Ultimate, just like wandering up. Like, I think that's probably unlikely, but it could be somebody who, their cousin plays Ultimate or something like that, or they played one summer of League, or they played, DC, I think used to have like a click league that like some companies and stuff would have teams for. Like those people who are like fringe Ultimate fans, familiar. Like how many of those people might engage with it?
100%. And
we're not going to find out the data of that, I don't think, but I'd be curious. Maybe we can, if we have a reporter there, maybe we can do an exit poll.
Well, I think, the fact that they've invested in media and marketing, like you spend months trying to sell tickets, right? You like go to companies and say, hey, like we'll sell you tickets for $5 a pop that you can give out to people. You think about who fills up stadiums in normal times. Like if you go to a baseball game, there's always some companies having something, or there's like, it's, whatever night where all of the people, it's like, Irish night, and Irish people will come, and it's like Irish pride, and they like play, Irish music, and there's like a little video board thing. I mean, even professional sports, major professional sports have to do get out the tickets campaigns. So when you have your championship weekend, and you can make it kind of like this one-time event, I do think that this is a very good opportunity for them to set attendance records, given that, you're in an accessible place. So we'll see what happens.
You're making me think of like, in my head, I'm like already envisioning like a company that like, they're a small company, but they want to seem like a big time company. They can't afford to get a box for, the Nationals or the Wizards or the Mystics or something. So like, maybe we'll get a box for this AUDL championship thing, and we'll send our clients there. Maybe we'll look like big shots, but like, I don't know.
It will have the feel at what, a tenth of the cost or something.
It's true.
I'm sure they'd gladly sell you a box for way, way less than you'd have to pay for the same thing at a, major professional sporting event.
All right. So Charlie's going to get a box for subscribers, and we'll do a subscription drawing, and some subscribers will
That's
get
actually a really good giveaway idea.
It is. I mean, let's do the economics on it,
Maybe we'll do it. If you're a subscriber by a certain date, like random drawing to get flown out and like do the whole thing.
Just throwing it out there.
It's not a bad idea. Speaking of throwing something out there, we're going to throw this out there. Hey, Stall 7 podcast, hosted by Chris McLinn and Alex Rubin, talking about the AUDL every week on UltiWorld. We're calling you out. We're going to do a picks contest. We want to know if you can beat us in picks this year. You're the experts, so let's go at it. We're going to figure out what this is going to look like. We're probably going to pick against the spread, and we'll figure out how we're going to make those picks, and maybe we can get listeners in on it as well. So looking forward to another year, and maybe, Keith, there will be an opportunity to bet on the AUDL this year, in which case, of course, there was MyBookie in 2019. In which case, maybe we'll have, I will definitely be writing a subscriber only gambling column if that happens. Just putting it out there right now.
I might be able to contribute to that, but I think that, yeah, it'd be great to have somebody to set lines, because betting against your own lines is a little weird, but yeah, we did the Beat Charlie challenge once, I believe, for the college championships, where it was like, can you outpick Charlie? Maybe that's what we do. And, obviously we keep tabs specifically on how the Stall 7 guys do, but that'll let the fans also, the listening public, the audience, participate. And then if you beat Charlie in against the spread picks, then you'll be entered to win a prize.
I like it. Now, if I recall correctly, I did not win outright, but I beat a lot of people.
You did. I think that like of the 700 people or something that entered, like you were in the top 30 or something like that. I
feel pretty good about that.
Totally just making this up, but
yeah, that sounds pretty good
from memory. But
I like the sound of it.
You did well. Not a lot of people beat you.
All right, make sure to join us for our subscriber bonus segment where we talk about some of our candidates for breakout players this AUDL season. Who is going to either, they're on a new team or they're new to the league or they've been in the league, but we think they've got the chance to level up in 2021. We're going to talk about that in our subscriber bonus segment. You can become a subscriber for less than $4 a month at ultiworld.com/subscribe. Before we sign it off, I do want to note, Keith is about to be a new father anytime. Next couple weeks, we're all very excited for him. And what that means is that he will be away from the show for, I don't know, we'll see how long. A few weeks at least. So we're going to have some guest host spots available. Probably going to have some other Ultiworld staffers join me on the show. But hey, do you want to come on the show? Are you a listener and you want to talk with me on the show about any topic at all? This is your chance. Send us an email, deeplook@ultiworld.com. Hit us up on Twitter @deeplookpod. And hey, you could join me here and we can talk trash about Keith, the Atlanta Hawks, whatever you're feeling. And while Keith is out. Are you excited, Keith? I mean, obviously we don't want to lose you for 6 weeks or whatever it's going to be here on the show, but you must be thrilled.
I am. I mean, mostly at this point, it's just like nervous energy. You're just waiting for it to start. So earlier this week, I compared it to it's like I have like the most important tournament ever, but I just don't know when it starts. Like, could start this week, could start next week. Someone might just call and be like, okay, first bowl is starting in half an hour, time to warm up. Like, that's what it feels like.
Do you feel warmed up in this analogy?
Somewhat, yeah. I mean, like we have the things that we need. We have like the objects. We've done the classes. We've talked to the right people. Like, you always want it to be perfect, but like I feel like we could set a floor. Like we can do good. I don't know if we're gonna get close to perfect yet, but like I feel like we could do a good job. So yes.
Well, I mean, I will just admit we are recording this show a week early, so this show is going to run, a few days after we record it, and by the time we're back for our next show, Keith may be out. So if in fact that is the case, we'll just say from the full Deep Look family, congratulations, and looking forward to seeing the photos and of course talking with you and hopefully seeing you soon. And we're all super excited for you, Keith.
Maybe me and the baby will pop on for like a guest appearance or something.
Ooh,
just a little video appearance.
A little interview.
Yeah, a little interview.
I love it. All right, well that is going to do it for this week's show. For Keith Raynor, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.